Today, I want to talk to you guys about something that is very near and dear to my heart. A project that is in the works that I can only pledge my support to and hopefully get the word out for because it means so much to me. But I make a very special exception in this case because I don't really like to needlessly hype things that aren't finished yet. In fact, I hate that aspect of video game culture entirely. I despise this idea that we can set our sights on and have expectations of an industry that has failed those same expectations time and time again, year after year, basically since its inception. And this extends to the fans, the passionate people who take the time to create things because of their love for games. Things like AM2R, The Forgotten City, Undertale, and Black Mesa are the exception rather than the rule. Because video games are, let's be honest, exceptionally hard to make. People can have all the passion in the world, but these sorts of things take time and people change. They can become tired or find that their pursuits and hobbies are simply no longer an option or worth the effort. And this can be due to many different reasons, such as a change of perspective or even a living situation. In some cases, they can even become greedy or malicious in their intent, because at the end of the day, fan-made projects are made by fans, and not all of them are up to the task. I say all of this only because it's important to remember to temper expectations. As excited as I want to be, I have to remind myself of this constantly. My ADHD ass is a magnet for knee-jerk reactions and excitement for things I love all the time. I want nothing more than to see my wildest dreams come true. I mean, who doesn't? But it's important not to lose sight of reality. But this project is special to me. Shadow of the Colossus is a game that I love endlessly. I mean, anyone who's been subscribed to this channel for any amount of time knows this and knows it well. I've done 3 different Let's Plays of every different edition. I've covered both normal and hard mode, taken fast and slow approaches of explaining the game's mechanics, gone over its many intricacies and tricks. As far as the game aspect of Shadow of the Colossus is concerned, I don't think I've left a single stone unturned. Multiple playthroughs, Twitch streams, singular videos, and just gushing about what I still consider to be quite possibly my favorite video game of all time. Although it's really darn close and I sometimes flip-flop on a day-to-day basis. I love this game, and yet I haven't even broken down the other half of what makes Shadow of the Colossus so special. Well, that's not to say I haven't, I just haven't done so properly. This game has quite possibly the most passionate community of any single-player-only game ever released, at least if we omit recently released games. For a 17-year-old, a single-player, mostly linear, and very straightforward game that takes the average person 6 to 8 hours to beat on their first playthrough, released on the PlayStation 2, that doesn't even run all that well with a pretty poor and inconsistent frame rate, I mean, what the hell makes that game so special, huh? Truly. Moreover, why is it still discussed? Why is it still relevant? Because that's the truly interesting part of this discussion. A lot of it has to do with its approach to storytelling and world building. You have to understand that Shadow of the Colossus was not the first game to dabble in ambiguous storytelling. In fact, it wasn't even the first in its own series. Shadow of the Colossus also isn't the first game to let players run around in an open world, but it is quite possibly, or at least most effectively, the first game to truly utilize both of these aspects to enhance its mystery. While in so many ways, Shadow of the Colossus is a very straightforward narrative telling the story of one man's sacrifice to bring a dead woman back to life in spite of the consequences with little else to read into, Fumito Ueda's background in visual arts compelled him to leave nuggets of information all over the place. Little breadcrumbs forming trails that lead to nothing but the endless bounds of our own imaginations. They're all over the place with so little explained and so many questions left unanswered in the design of the world and the many aspects of the plot. A lot of people can see this as simply lazy, hackneyed design, but the rest of us see it as something more, and this extends to the world itself. The Forbidden Lands might truly be the first open world to make people think, what lies beyond what we can't see? What's on the other side of those mountains? Nowadays, sentences and notions like this seem to be little more than fluff meant to enhance the many stale, static, and generally superfluous open worlds that have become a dime a dozen across the game industry. But back then, that was real. Naive and filled with a sense of malevolent optimism as it may have been. But what makes Shadow of the Colossus in particular so special isn't just those feelings that it invoked, but the fact that that curiosity was actually, genuinely, and truly rewarded. In 2009, a GameFAQs forum user by the name of Peekle found a totally unused, unreachable location just outside the bounds of the map that featured an enormous, fully modeled, rendered textured dam, complete with collision detection that had been left over from the game's initial development. This discovery essentially opened up a huge can of worms. Figuratively, of course, although in one case, Anyway, the early development details of Shadow of the Colossus are truly fascinating. Originally, it was meant to be an online co-op game where you would tackle these battles with friends in the more primitive PS2 online landscape, but that was quickly scrapped. The game was supposed to have 48 colossi from the start. 48! But this number never made it past the pre-development stage. What was planned as far as halfway through development was 24 fights, but we know that that final number ended up being 16. Now, exactly which 8 colossi were cut can be inferred, but the exact ones are sort of unknown because there are more than 8 known to us in some form or another. Now, to fully grasp why this is such a big deal is to understand just how exciting and mind-blowing the discovery of the dam was. Even as soon as players reached the end credits on October 18th, 2005, the day the game was released, people wondered if there was more, if a hidden 17th Colossus existed. Again, this sense of mystery inspired people. It still does. The enduring myth that maybe there's a secret so deep and so hidden and so complicated that somehow it's just waiting to be uncovered. While this elusive 17th Colossus is all but proven to not exist, that search sparked a wave of discoveries, and the dam is what opened the floodgates. Ironically, now that I think about it. Can any of these lost colossi still exist in the game? Well, yes, as a matter of fact. In some ways, I should stress. Sound files and textures and strangely worded bits of data added to the mystery, while the art book gave people breadcrumbs. People wanted to know about how these colossi behaved. Why were they cut? Ueda gave us hints here and there, but all of it is vague. In the Japanese video game industry, parsing through this sort of information is generally considered taboo or even disrespectful. Hacking games is considered copyright infringement, and to plunge into a game's data is like peeling back the curtain on a work of art. You may notice this sentiment in the way Japanese game developers typically handle fan projects, litigation and copyright law aside. It's generally considered quite rude to pick these things apart. While Japanese developers tend to happily talk about the development of their games, the ideas they didn't go with, the mistakes and the troubles along the way are rarely discussed, if at all. In the case of Shadow of the Colossus, this dissonance permeates the discourse around the game's development. The things that were lost. Even now, 17 years on, it's still effectively taboo. It's still meant to be spoken of with whispers and hushed tones, romanticized for what it could have been, but not what should be. Even Ueda himself is quoted as saying the game as it is was designed for what it became. For 16 colossi, no more and no less. To add any more would have required the developers to completely overhaul the game. To quote Ueda, there's certainly leftover test data and half-edited areas, but it's a bit like the Minus World and Super Mario Bros. I think it holds more romantic appeal if you don't know the specifics. Romantic appeal. That is what these secrets are meant to be, because that's what Shadow of the Colossus is. Romantic. Artistic, more than the sum of its parts, a treasure that its most ardent supporters hold so nearly and so dearly, a passion unmatched that most video game communities will never understand. That passion is why I'm making this video at all. In January of last year, I caught a Reddit post on the Shadow of the Colossus subreddit talking about this fan project called Beyond the Forbidden Lands, a group effort to bring back 8 of the lost colossi into the game in a playable state. I figured, why the heck not? I'll follow along and see how this pans out. So I joined the subreddit, followed the Twitter account, and generally thought nothing of it otherwise for a while. I saw a couple updates here and there, but it didn't really seem like the project was going along with a lot of speed. Then, about a week ago, this video was posted by YouTuber Max Durot, I think that's how you pronounce it, who apparently is the biggest channel out there drawing attention to this project. He made a video over a year ago just discussing the idea, but last week is where things really got interesting. Max sat down with 2 of the project leads and went over the progress the project has made thus far, and I just watched this thing in awe. I won't talk about the specifics of the project too much because honestly, you should just go watch the video yourself. But there is so much in there that's like a dream come true. Just to see the way Sirius and Spider move, the arena for Griffin, and the fact that these guys are going the extra mile and tackling every single named Colossus we know about is just, I can barely describe my feelings on this. Sirius, Spider, Griffin, Rock, Worm, Devil, Phoenix, Monkey, Yamori, and even Avis. Even a Colossus that has nothing more than a passing mention in data files and a couple pieces of concept art is being brought to life, solely because of the dedication and passion of some incredibly talented fans of this amazing game. They are completely non-profit, not accepting any amount of donations or support beyond just asking for people to follow along and to partake in what they make. It's entirely for free, which is probably a good thing because oftentimes when money gets involved in a fan project before it's done, that can usually be the death knell. The approach they're taking here is fascinating, and I love that they're actually flexing their creative freedoms here. For all that we know and love about these lost colossi, there really isn't a single one we know about so definitively that the design of its encounter in AI and arena is essentially spelled out to us. Even the ones we've seen videos of in action, all of it has room for change and creative liberties purely by design. This is what Ueda wanted. Well, not exactly to this extent, I think, but he wanted the fans to run with it themselves. He wanted them to believe in these colossi in their own way, to see them as they are, and to fantasize about what they could be. This project is what they could be, and this is what I'm gushing over. It's honestly incredible. As a longtime fan of this game, and while I repeat what I said at the beginning, I'm not banking on this project totally succeeding. I'm not ride or die on its completion. I just love seeing what this community can do, because more than anything, even in its current state, Beyond the Forbidden Lands is a showcase of the dedication and love this community has had for this 17-year-old boss rush game where you play as a stupid guy on a stupid horse trying to save this stupid girl for a stupid demon in a desolate and empty open world map that has no business being as fantastic and memorable as it is. Please support this project, guys. Go follow them on Twitter at BTFL_game, but more importantly, I would ask that you follow the Discord. You can find the invite link on that same Twitter, or if you don't have a Twitter account, go to btflgame.com. That's without the underscore, and that website is basically just a glorified link to the Discord itself, and that is where you can stay up to date. Show your support and generally be as excited as I, the jaded asshole who is never excited for anything anymore because the game industry has completely worn down and destroyed his sense of optimism over the last 28 years. I'll see you all in the next one.